Hello, everybody.
Hi, guys. Like we promised, this is the first out of three lives we're going to have in those 8 weeks of learning. And we picked a Q&A session for this one. So we can go through your questions that you've asked in the past couple of weeks or you've sent through emails before purchasing the course. So we'd just like to address those questions today.
I think it's a great way to open up the discussion. Also, I think it's a great way to get everyone engaged and see where our discussion kind of goes. I think then throughout the following weeks, we can address specific problems as well, or not necessarily problems. We can open up specific discussions as we go along. But for this one, we thought just as a kind of introductory live that we can just do something more general to let you guys pave the way for the following lives that we're going to do in 2 weeks' time. So we've
Right.
got a couple of questions. Anya, do you want to lead the way?
Sure. I will read through them. Okay, the first question. What position do you recommend for a start line stay? Sit, down, or stand? So we were asked this question in a community, and I thought it was a good one. But my answer was it basically depends on your dog because we like to see our dogs be comfortable in a position. So my first tip would be simply choose whatever your dog prefers. Some dogs are naturally lying down, some naturally prefer to sit. The only behavior that I would not like to be using for a start line stay is a stand. That doesn't mean no dog is comfortable in a stand and would prefer a stand or is actually a best position for them. But it's the hardest one to keep criteria because with a sit, your criteria can be butt on the ground. That's it. So you will see that when your dog maybe lifts up their butt, which happens commonly, you're gonna see that, and you're gonna go and correct the dog in a position. When you have a lie down, my criteria would be your chest on the ground. So you can see when they start to lift their chest off the ground, and they kind of go like this. That's when I would go back and I would correct them in the position. So I would really want to have them stick to that criteria. Well, with a stand, you basically are asking for all 4 feet static, which is quite a difficult criteria. For some dogs, it's not, but for most, it is because quite soon you can get some fidgety feet, the feet moving forward, one back foot steps forward, and I feel like it's just very difficult for you to see all those little changes in the position of your dog, but also for your dog to be aware of the movement of their feet at all times. So I feel like it brings a lot more mistakes to the table in the training process. However, um, it is completely possible that your dog would enjoy this position the most, and you feel like you feel confident to be able to see those little movements and stick to your criteria. In that case, yes, you can also use a stand, but I just feel like then you have to really be careful about keeping that criteria.
Yeah, I think I would 99.9% of people I would advise against it, to be honest. Because like even if I think of myself, there's absolutely no way when I'm leading out to my point in the course that I would be able to see whether my dog has moved one of their feet forward or not. I also think like even generally, if I think from my point of view, if someone asks me to stand for, I don't know, even, okay, obviously at the start line, the dog doesn't have to wait for a really long time. But if somebody asks me to stand for like 5 minutes or so, very likely I wouldn't be able to stand completely still with both of my feet planted on the floor, or I would eventually shift my weight to one side and move one of my feet. Or like, obviously for dogs, they have 4 feet, so this is probably much easier for them to stay planted on the ground. But even at the start line, I often see that dogs shift their weight forward because they get ready to start running, or I don't know, back, you know. And I think even with subtle gestures like that, you can get them to move 1 foot forward or take half a step, which already means that the criteria is broken. So I think generally it's much easier not only to set yourself up for success as a trainer, to make it easier for yourself to see when your dog broke the criteria or not. It's also easier for the dog to keep the criteria. If someone tells me, yeah, stay seated for the next 5 minutes, yeah, sure thing, I can stay seated in my chair for the next 5 minutes. If I had to stand, yeah, I hope that makes sense. I think
Yes, I would always go with something that has an easy criteria to keep, and that
to
is
see.
the easiest criteria to keep for the dog as well, and for you to be able to see it really well.
Yeah, so I think that for me, that's either a sit or a lie down, because you
Yeah.
can clearly see with a sit if your dog shuffles forward, and with a lie down as well.
Right.
If
Now, from the perspective of what's more efficient, this is a research that we have been doing at Dogs for Motion, and we'll probably have results in autumn. Whether the sit is more efficient to start from a sit and push from the back forward, whether it's more efficient to start from a lie down. This is something that we will eventually update you guys on. But again, I feel like it strongly depends on the dog, what position
by
they're
what
most
Anya
most.
means efficient is what's faster on the agility
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
If it's faster for the dog to get up and start running from a lie down, or if it's faster for the dog to get up and start running from a sit or a stand. Yeah.
Right.
I
If you
also
have
think
any,
it's good to listen to your dog's preferences. You know, Ponyo's the kind of dog which I think many border collies have this as well, is when you put them in a sit and you start walking away from them, they drop down into the kind of crouched position to wait for you. So me, for example, I almost never put Ponyo into a sit because his default is lying down. So I kind of roll with that and use the lie down for Ponyo. But I've seen, I think, a couple of dogs in our community which I would almost ask them to sit instead of to lie down, because they just seem to prefer it. So
yeah,
my
Tuvalu is
point
also a
being,
border collie, but she would always prefer a sit because she likes to see, like she likes to sit straight and be able to see. And for her, that's definitely her default position. So I feel like if you observe your dog, then it's very, I think it comes very clearly what's easier, what's preferred for them to do. Okay.
and where they can be successful more often, more
Yeah.
easily.
And if you don't know and you cannot choose, then just practice both positions. And throughout the process of teaching your dog to stay, Jesus, you are annoying. Hello? And in the process of teaching your dog to stay, you're gonna probably see what position they're more successful in, and which position they tend to break more, or they tend to make more mistakes. So this is kind of how you can also just follow along the course, teaching both positions, practicing your stay in both positions, and then see whatever your dog prefers. Some dogs are fine with both, so then that means that you can choose. Okay. The second question: can I use the same method when doing hoopers?
Yes,
For sure.
plain and
Yeah.
simple. Yes.
As long as there's a start line, and you have to lead out when your dog has to stay at the start line, then yes, our course is made to prove your stay position, be it for when you need it in your everyday life, be it when you need it for solid start line stay at agility trainings, when you want your dog to stay for a picture, so yes, the answer is definitely yes.
I mean, even if you do something like bike curing, why not? You ask your dog to sit while you get on the bike, get them hooked on the bike, and then you release them.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. There's many uses for it, so
Yeah.
feel free to use it wherever it comes in handy. I Also use it before I let my dogs go out the front door. So I always ask Ponyo to sit. I open the front door, I put my shoes on outside of my front door, and then I release him. We live in the countryside, so it's free to release him to go without the leash, but still, just in case, it's always good to check that there's no one else that's walking down the road or cycling or going with a car. But yeah.
That's also a great idea to prove the behavior once you're at that point, I feel like. Also before when you mentioned the bike yoring, I think that's also very emotional for dogs. They're in high emotions when waiting for you to get on the bike and clip them on a harness. So again, that's once we will get to there, moving to a competition environment, moving to a training environment, and then to a competition environment, I feel like for some dogs, you sitting on a bike kind of brings out the same kind of emotions in them. So it's a great way to prove your behavior in different situations as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the question was, where can you use it, not where can you train it. You can
Right.
use it.
Right.
It's probably not the best idea to start training in that kind of situation.
No, definitely. But once you're at that point where you just need more proofing, feel welcome to use it anywhere. Okay. Then we had somebody asking if they can use the same stay command or stay behavior when the dog is waiting by the course or even in a cafe or relaxing next to you. So should you use a different command for this? So now we were just talking in what kind of situations you can use the stay behavior, but I would split the behavior of stay to two different stays. In my opinion, waiting at the start line is an active stay. So that means it's not super prolonged, although we are working on duration in the process of training it because we want to prove it and we want to make sure that our dog understands that even if there's duration, distractions, and distance, they're still supposed to be staying. Even though in the end result, you actually don't need that much duration when you're put your dog on the start line and start walking. It's not like you're going to be walking for 3 minutes, right? But for me, that's an active stay. Active stay to me would be I put my dog in a position and then within probably 30 seconds to maximum a minute, I will release my dog and they'll be able to go run the course. And for I call it like more of a settling kind of stay, or like maybe you could call it like a passive stay, would be for me where I go when I go to a cafe and I take my dog and I bring them a little mat and I put my dog on the mat and I want them to be staying on the mat or like just lying next to me for half an hour or so. Or if I was, for example, going to an agility training and I wanted my dog to be able to stay next to a course while I do the course walk, then I would not ask for an active stay. So I would not expect my dog to be really readily waiting for my release cue, but I would want to have a more of a relaxed stay, more of a relaxed settle per se, and I would teach it differently, and I would teach it in a different setting and different session as well. So my dog has a very clear criteria of now I need you to sit and pay attention because you're going to be released and you'll be able to go run, or you're going to settle here for a while and we're not going anywhere. You just have to relax. You don't need to pay attention. You can fall asleep if you want to. So those would be two different behaviors to me, and my dogs have a settle and they have a stay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was thinking this since you started talking. I think the way that I would split them up is a stay versus a settle.
Right.
And you kind of got there in the end. So I think the difference isn't necessarily the duration that your dog has to stay for, but the kind of expectations that you place on them when you ask them to wait. One being wait for something to happen. So like wait at the start line, wait until we start running, wait for me to send you on to the first Hooper's obstacle, versus the second one being, don't wait for anything right now. I just need you to switch off.
Right. Yeah. And for me, I also in a stay, I want my dog to be in a very nice position, a very nice square sit or a very nice square lie down. That means it's like a sphinx position kind of, because I want them to have this power to push from their rear and go forward when I release them. While for a settle, I actually prefer the way I tell my dogs to settle and the way they lie down is by kind of shifting their thigh to the side, so they kind of they lie on the side with their butt kind of. So it's a more of a relaxed, if you imagine it like a very relaxed, um, like kind of like this kind of, right? So this is, I also, when I teach the behavior of a settle lie down and a lie, like an active stay lie down, I lure my dog differently to be able to get the muscle memory for a very specific position, be it a very active one that allows them to push from the rear when they have to start, or a relaxed one where they basically, yeah, where they can basically just relax, because I don't want them any tense and needing to keep that nice position when I just need them to be completely relaxed.
So, do you want to give the people a little bit of an insight into how we train the not the two different behaviors? Because obviously the start line stay, they now know how we approach it. But with the settle, do you want to give people a bit of an insight into how we approach teaching that? Because I think it goes beyond just the difference in position in how they lie down. I sometimes I put Ponyo into a start line stay, and he will choose to stay on his side, especially if it's after a couple of repetitions during a training. But then as soon as I lead out, he readjusts himself to make it easier for him to push out of the position. But I don't necessarily require him to go into a sphinx lie down when I put him into the position. I mean, I do have different commands for different positions, of course. It's just not something I would necessarily argue over, if you would say it like that, right at the start, if you know what I mean. Anyways, this is, I just think I've gotten a bit off course, but I think the difference in training a settle versus a stay, like the start line stay, does include the different positions, but is not just about that. I think we chasing the tail focus more kind of also on the emotions and stuff like that. I don't know if this is something you would that maybe people would find valuable if we go into, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mentioned the position just because I feel like it's also much easier for the dog to kind of know, um, to have more context of what you're expecting of them. And because I feel like it's very hard to start from a very relaxed lie down where the butt is kind of shifted to
Yeah.
the side. Um, but of course, it's the emotions that your dog learns in that actually affect the behavior. So with puppies, I would start as teaching a stay in one active training session, just like, and I would go through those position proofing games. And for the settle, I would start with a mat, which we also put in the course. So you can kind of look for inspiration in the kind of, I think it's settling on a mat and then sending on a mat on distance and then adding duration on a mat. Those exercises, we put them in because we like to have your dog understand the position of where they're supposed to stay, and mat really helps them understand it because it's a very clear boundary. But I started teaching my puppies settle on a mat, and if needed on a leash, and I would give them a chew and I would reward for calmness. So it's not big differences in sense of proofing the behavior afterwards, because you still want to have a very good understanding of a settle without leaving their position, but it's just that you kind of focus more on this relaxation kind of part, while with the stay we don't really focus on be super relaxed. We still want our dog to be paying attention and be focused, Yeah.
Be in the zone.
Yeah.
I think also with teaching my dog to settle, I think also I started doing it at like restaurants and stuff like that, and it was not so actively working on it, but was more, you kind of settle here. I can give you a chew. You do your own thing. I want you to just peace, relax. On a platform or on a blanket or whatever. I want you to stay within that kind of area. But the training looks a lot different in that I'm not really actively click rewarding and
Yeah.
adding different training different scenarios or adding different distractions and duration and working on the timing of things and yeah, I think that's the main difference here. So
Yeah.
if we kind of return back to the question, which is, would you use a different command? Yeah, but not only a different command, I think I would want a different behavior. So one is, I want my dog to get in the zone, to be ready for action. The other one is, I want you to settle down for the next couple of minutes, half an hour. I want you to know that right now nothing is expected of you, and I want you to wait,
Relax.
until something happens.
Yeah, well said. Okay. Next question. Should I change the position or my release cue when retraining this day? Yeah, you can take it away.
Yeah, okay. Let me just think about I think obviously the if I answer this question just off the bat very quickly, I would say yes, especially if you're having problems. But it's not necessarily so much so that you have to change the cue itself or the position. It's that you really have to change your criteria. I think, or not necessarily change, but change your
Sharpen it.
yeah. So change your expectations and how strict you are with them. So I think if your dog, generally, sometimes retraining a certain behavior once your dog has already learned the wrong one is much more difficult than training a new behavior. So I think for most people, most trainers, it's easier to start at square zero than to try and fix something that's already broken. So in that sense, I would in most cases suggest to change the cue or the position, but it's not just about the cue itself. I think it's about building a new skill set for the dog. And in order to build a new skill set, you can't work with the broken one. You can't take what your dog already knows and do it on the training field, or take the old behavior that is imperfect and try to train it better on the field. You have to start from square zero, which is why we also in our class always reinforce the fact that you have to start in your living room or in your bedroom or somewhere quiet where your dog can be set up for success, because we're building these new foundations. So yeah, I'm trying to think of a helpful analogy, and for me, maybe it's kind of like if you were to build a skyscraper. You can build a skyscraper that's super, super tall, but if it doesn't have the right foundations, the wind will blow it over. You get a little gust of wind and it will fall over. Whereas, so if you wanted to fix that skyscraper, you would have to kind of tear it down or move it and go back to the foundations in the ground to build really sturdy foundations on top of which you can then put that skyscraper that will then stand strong and sturdy. So it's not so much about what glass you are using or what cue you are using, in that skyscraper. In the end, I think that's the key here, is to go back to the foundations. Now, if you can go back to the foundations and really change the way that you as a trainer approach them, because that's where clearly that okay, the emotions play a part in this, but most of all, it's us not sticking to our criteria, which breaks down the stay for a majority of the cases. I'm not going to say that there aren't exceptions, but a majority of the cases, I would say it boils down to the fact that we don't stick to our criteria, and that there are not strong foundations. So I think if you can go back to those foundations and really change the way you stick to your criteria and how strict you are with your criteria and still keep the same cue, go ahead and do that. But in most cases, I would say it's probably easier if you change the cue or work with a different position. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't
Yeah.
know if I know you have anything else to add, but I think
I don't really, except for maybe if you observe your dog and if you see that there are certain emotions coming into your picture of training when you mention a command, when you tell your dog to sit or lie down, or when you release them, then, and if there is an emotion attached to that cue, then I would definitely think of changing it. But yeah, for the most part, like Eva said, go to the beginning and stick to your criteria, because your dog will adapt even though they have had previous a history of understanding a certain cue, and they were not sticking to that criteria. I think they can learn the whole behavior with the same cues from the start again. I feel like dogs are incredible at learning at any age. So, and changing their behavior, as long as you are willing to change, and as long as you are willing to stick to your criteria. Sure.
yeah. In I think in most cases, this is what it's like. It's almost never the dog that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's everything else but that. Um,
And Eva and I, we also do sheep herding, and our trainer always says that she's so happy to know when the handler is the problem, when it's not the dog's problem, like the dog cannot do a certain thing, because as long as the handler is the problem, it's always completely fixable, or what would you call it?
yeah.
So I feel like for most cases, when you do better and when you learn better, then your dog can do better as well.
Yeah. I in sheep herding, I think there's another layer added to it because obviously you're working with the instinct
Yeah.
of your dog, which okay, yes, in some cases the dog can be the problem if they don't have any herding instinct. Which
Yeah, but I brought it up because so many times people go, yeah, but my dog cannot. But my
yeah,
dog has these giant emotions, and they cannot. And I'm
yeah,
trying, but my dog can't. So I feel like as soon as you grow as a trainer, the more you're gonna be able to help your dog even deal with those emotions. And as sooner that you become a team, then the behavior is gonna improve and your teamwork is gonna improve. So
yeah, yeah.
just
That
think of you and your dog as a team.
yes,
Don't blame each other for the mistakes you're making.
yeah, and
Yes.
that's not to say that you're not facing problems. Yes, very likely you can be facing problems, but it's just a kind of word of encouragement that if you change, so will your dog.
Right. Okay. Another question was about a dog that's very nervous and fidgety when the owner is trying to keep them in position. They keep moving, and they are practicing at home, so there are no distractions, but the dog is still nervous.
Okay.
Right. So, first of all, that's great that you're practicing indoors, in your living room, in your bedroom, so somewhere where the dog would normally be relaxed. I feel like setting up for success is the most important, and I feel like for a majority of dogs, it really helps to start building foundations where in an environment where there's no distractions and they are comfortable. For fidgety dogs specifically, and for dogs that like to scoot forward, there is a lesson, I believe, in position proofing games. I think so. And what we recommend for dogs that keep fidgeting and moving on the ground, where you try to keep them in position, is a platform. Now I can show you what kind of platform I would use, and then I will tell you why. So we like, for a small dog, a small platform. For a bit bigger dog, a bit bigger platform. So it's something where your dog can basically, so this would be for a sit, obviously, and then a bit bigger if you were to have your dog lying down.
I mean, it depends. Also, if you have a Sheltie, you can also use the other one for a lie
Yeah,
down.
the small one. Yeah, but it's even too small for a Sheltie, I believe.
Okay.
Because it's quite tiny. But anyway, we like platforms because they serve as a small reminder for your dog to keep their position. Because even if it's just a platform that's just a bit taller from the ground, it's already more clear for your dog where they're supposed to stay. Obviously, when you put your dog in a position on the ground, be it a sit or a lie down, as soon as they start moving, they will just kind of fidget forward. They will fidget to the side. And when they're standing on a platform, if they're going to go more to the left, more to the right, or like come a bit forward, they're going to get off the platform. So that's on you then to keep the criteria and correct them in position. Another lesson that I would recommend for all of you dealing with fidgeting, nervous behaviors at the start is our arousal lessons. I believe they are coming now. Eva, help me out with this. I believe they're coming in, moving the behavior to a training environment.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where there is a lesson on 2 dogs dealing with arousal and how we help them kind of bring that arousal down and keep them in position. So this I think there's 2 lessons. One is a case study and one is just generally about arousal. So you can get some information on that. But to start with, I really recommend you reading through Stop the Scoot lesson. Again, there's a little study on a Moody that we were training with last autumn. And we could achieve great results, I think, within a couple of days on a platform. Just keeping the criteria, sticking to the criteria of no feet are moving. For her, at some point, we even used like a little platform, like a really tiny platform. If you imagine, she could only put her front feet on. So we could work on understanding to keep the front feet still. Because what she was doing was she was sitting with her butt really still, and then her feet were doing like this. And so it was something that I felt was like subconscious that she was doing and wasn't really aware of the feet moving. So we worked with the platform so she could get understanding of, I need your feet on the platform at all times. And with a lot of position proofing games, she could manage to keep the position for longer and longer and slowly stop to fidget her front feet.
Yeah, I think this is what I was going to add. Is that there are also a couple of different reasons why your dog might be fidgeting. I think the platform is really a great way that gets them to think about what they're doing with their body, because I think there are many dogs that don't realize that they're actually moving their feet, which can be, if you don't use a platform, it can be quite frustrating for them to stick to the criteria because they don't necessarily realize what they're doing wrong. So the dog that Anya was describing before, she would actually fidget once you gave her the treat, and when she had the treat in her mouth, I think she got excited by the fact that she was eating, and she would make like a couple of steps. So it was every time click, reward, and then so then it was really great to see her change that behavior when she was put on a platform, and where that became a lot clearer for her. Because when we first started, you would put her into a sit, she did really well, you clicked and rewarded her, and once she got that reward, she would scoot over towards you. So just by like a centimeter or two, or she just moved her feet a little bit, but like I always say, with the excitement of a competition, that little scoot can turn into 3 meters or more, which means that your dog will be so close to the jump that very likely once you do actually release them, they might knock over a bar or whatever it might be, or go around it, or yeah,
Go under it.
yeah, exactly. So my point here was that I think you sometimes with the fidgety kind of dogs, you need a lot of body awareness also, that they even recognize what they're doing. It might not be with their front feet, it might be with their back end. They might be moving it forward just a little bit and not even recognize that this is happening, because it's a natural kind of expression of excitement, I would say.
Yeah.
With many dogs. I did also notice that some dogs tend to fidget when you're just kind of waiting for them to do something, which sometimes is the hardest. I think the duration part of the stay exercise tends to be hardest for many dogs, because once you're just sitting there and looking at them, especially with dogs who have some experience with shaping, they tend to go into, okay, you're waiting for me to offer a behavior, let me show you something.
Yeah,
Which then also, yeah.
And for Tuki, one of the things that made her fidget was this delivering of the food. And once we started adding duration, she started to fidget after, like, I was counting in my head, 1, 2, treat, 1, 2, treat, and then 1, 2, 3, and it was sometimes already too long, and she was back to fidgeting.
Yeah.
So I had to really reward every couple of seconds and then slowly make it longer and longer for her to be able to not practice this behavior. And I feel like the major reason, the biggest reason why she stopped fidgeting as well, is that she had a very clear criteria, and the more sessions that I did with her, the more she understood what she was doing, and the less there was anticipation from her side, and the less there was excitement, because it was very clear what we were doing. She was very much set up for success, and I feel like this also kind of lowered her arousal, and in the end kind of made her stop fidgeting as well.
Yeah.
Anything to add, or do we continue?
Yeah, I think my point being was just whether it's because of an emotion that your dog is feeling, or whether it's because they're offering you behaviors because they think you're waiting for them to do some sort of shaping exercise. The platform is great because it's very black and white.
Yeah.
You step off of the platform, you get reset into the position, you don't get any reward. You wait on the platform, you get a reward.
Yeah, and I would also have my rate of reinforcement crazy high. So my dog, basically in the beginning, I just feed and feed and feed and feed. And if I see that there is like a small behavior leaking into my sitting position, then I would feed even like faster, and then release, and then faster and release.
Yeah.
So my dog doesn't get any crazy ideas of what to offer between those treats. And then I would spread it out throughout sessions so I could start feeding them in position with bigger breaks in between, without having another behavior come in the picture.
Yeah, I think that's also with the dogs who tend to think really fast, and like things to go really fast because their brain is working at 100 miles an hour. It's great to you set them up for success by being basically faster than them. To not give them that time to kind of think about what's happening and what they must do and what they should offer you, because with fidgety dogs, they offer you something really fast, so you have to be like a treat dispenser,
match their speed,
because then once it's, you don't have to problem solve. I think that's the solution with also, obviously not with every fidgety dog, but with many dogs that fidget, I think a really great solution is don't give them the time to problem solve themselves, because if you have a naturally fidgety dog, their problem solving likely won't be to keep still, but will be to move around. So I think if you kind of eliminate that idea of them having to problem solve themselves, but just click reward, click reward, click reward, click reward all the time, until they have a history of reinforcement with the fact that this exercise is just, okay, I'm sitting still. Okay, nothing else is expected of me. I'm just sitting still. Then you can slowly start to increase the duration between your clicks. And if you do it incrementally like that, I think your dog will be less inclined to move around and think of a solution themselves, because they will know that, okay, the reward is coming to me. The reward is coming to me without me having to do anything extra.
Right. And I feel like now again, if the better you are, the more you grow as a trainer, the easier you will make it for your dog as well. Especially with those fast thinking breeds, I feel like. And I feel like mastering the timing is everything.
Yeah. But obviously not every dog is like this. So this is specifically for dogs who tend to go above and beyond with what they offer.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Right. So this is the most common question we have received before we released the course, after we released the course, in the community, through emails, on social media. And it was always about dogs only breaking stays on training, on competition, but never at home. So the question goes, I've been retraining the start line for 3 weeks now, but my dog still only has problems on the training field at competitions. Why? You want to take it away?
I think I've got a really good analogy for this one as well.
Yeah.
I would picture it like this. You're teaching your dog to trust you in the process. It's like as if I asked Anya to do the trustful, where the person stands turned towards you with their back and they fall backwards and the other person catches them. I think it's easy for you to do the trustful, for example, in the living room, and because you know that I will catch you when you do the trustful, versus if I go and ask you to stand on top of a bridge and ask you to trustful, and I'll let you know that I will catch you at the bottom of the bridge. Very likely, it would be easy for you to succeed and do the trustful when I'm standing right there next to you, waiting for you to do the trustful so I can catch you, versus if I put you on top of a bridge. Or similarly, if I asked you to jump off of a sofa, very likely you would find it very easy to do so. But if I asked you to bungee jump off of a bridge, it wouldn't be the same, because the excitement is much bigger. Sure, the behavior can be the same. Is the same if I asked you to jump off of a sofa versus if I asked you to bungee jump off of a bridge. The behavior is the same. You're jumping. But the circumstances are different. So I think that really often people overlook the circumstances, which, okay, the behavior is the same. Your dog knows how to stay, and they know how to stay in their living room. But the circumstances are not the same. Staying in the living room is not the same as staying at a competition. Staying at a competition, the stakes are much higher. The excitement is much higher. The emotions are bursting. The distractions present are much higher. The sights, the sounds, the smells, everything is 10 times more elevated. Just like bungee jumping off of a bridge is 10 times more elevated than bungee jumping off of a sofa. And I think that's the difference, that for our human brain to understand, it might seem like it's natural for dogs to sit in the living room
to generalize.
Yeah.
But it's rare, I feel like, even in dogs, to be able to generalize one behavior, even if you're just teaching tricks. For example, a give me paw, or maybe spinning in a circle left and right. So many dogs can do it in a living room because they learn in context. So they learn this behavior in a context of a living room, and you go outside and you try it on a walk and they're like, what? Because it's just such a different context. And you are lucky if you have a dog that generalizes incredibly fast. But even then, and incredibly well to be able to learn one behavior in a certain setting and be able to translate it everywhere. But even then, when there is emotions in play, even that can fall apart. And I feel like
I just think I think it's not only just about generalization. I think generally the environment can make the behavior so much different. Even if the physical thing that the dog is doing looks the same, the context is important. I think that's what I would say. Just like jumping off of a sofa versus skydiving. Yeah, the physical action that I'm doing is the same. The context is different, and I think that that's what's important. And one is so much harder to do than the other. And I had another point to make. Oh yeah, another comparison would be handling, just general handling and agility for me. During my training, remembering the course, handling correctly, connecting with my dog, making sure I keep eye contact with them, making sure I'm at the right place at the right time, making sure I run fast enough, making sure I slow down when I need to, making sure I call my dog when I need to, making sure I say their cue at the right time is all really simple for me. You put me on a competition, my brain goes out the window. Not completely, but it's much, much harder. And I think likely many of you will be able to relate, and it's the same for our dogs. So I think if I can give people one takeaway from generally this live or generally teaching them their dogs to stay, is that context is important, and doing the same behavior in one context versus in another can be completely different and much, much harder.
And to this point, I feel like it's so important to not only think about teaching the behavior in the comfort of your home or in your garden, and then just going to agility course and expecting the same. You have to really progressively plan how you will move this same behavior to be able to keep it. So, and this is something that we will be addressing, I think, in week 5 of this course, moving it to training environment.
Yeah.
In a way that you can keep the behavior and set your dog up for success. Because we still want to avoid errors as much as possible, because I feel like that's not fun for the dogs, especially when they have already broken the stay so many times. And I feel like if you have now decided to start from the beginning, I feel like it's also super important to be able to help them along the way to a reliable start line stay, step by step, without shortcuts.
Yeah, I think you have to build up to it, just like you would if you would go skydiving. You have to build up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of start like is it called like, what is it called when people are jumping with the skis, when they go like down the slope, and then what is it called? The
You
discipline.
mean like ski jumping?
Is it just ski jumping? Well, yeah, but like even then it's like scary to think how far they go down the slope before they kind of fly, but they didn't start there. They learned foundations through and through really well to be able to go through such a big distance.
Yeah.
So I think like anything giant that you want to achieve, you're always going to start with very small achievable steps and then go progressively higher with your abilities in training and stuff. So
because just like you would in elementary school, you have to build up for it, and once you have the skill set, then you can go into high school and solve an exam and have the knowledge necessary to know what a calculus equation is. Okay, maybe not calculus.
Yeah, I feel like shortcuts. I don't think there's a lot of shortcuts in life, or training your dog, because I feel like in the end of the day, it's gonna show somewhere. It's gonna be seen somewhere later on at the end result. And then if the end result again falls apart because you skipped steps, guess where you're gonna be going again?
To the foundations.
Foundations.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And I feel like we're repeating ourselves, and it's so basic to say start with foundations. But it's so important.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's it. If you guys have any further questions that pop up in your head while listening to this, feel free to post them in comments. We will definitely be replying them in the community, but it might give us some more ideas for our future next live that we are doing in about 2 weeks again. We will decide the topic of the next live based on what problems arise in the community, or what questions, what we want to learn more about, and so on. So we will decide depending on you guys and your progress and your questions. So
Yeah, so let us know if you found anything during our live particularly interesting, or that you would want to discuss further, because we can definitely get into it, into the discussion, depending on what you'd like to hear. So, or if you have any new questions, or any hot takes, maybe you have a hot take that you would like us to talk about, we can. So just let us know and write them below, and we'll get to them first in the comments and possibly in our next live.
right. Good. Okay, you guys have a beautiful day, a beautiful evening, and
Thank you for all of your questions.
keep posting videos. We love to see your videos. I think this is the easiest way to make progress, to get feedback, because so often you don't see your mistakes, but maybe we might see it, and we'll point them out, and we will help you progress faster with what you're doing.
Maybe not even mistakes. Maybe there's something about your training that you didn't notice, and that after filming yourself you might notice and see and improve. Not necessarily mistakes, maybe even for us getting to know your dog, we might have an exercise that could help your dog out specifically, that could make your training go much faster. So we've already gotten quite a lot of videos, and we always love to see them, so keep them coming.
Right. Have a nice evening, guys. See ya.
See you in 2 weeks. And in the community. We're active in the community, so we'll keep you updated there.